All right, good morning, chat. It's 12 p.m. and I'm gonna do a 12-hour session. Probably till 8 p.m. unfortunately. So the goal of today is one, kind of explain why I am streaming, studying, grinding, and then two, I just want to go through this guy's videos. I'm sure you guys have seen the thumbnail, but in this video he has a couple of important points. So one, I'll watch and then explain and just react to it. But something I wanted to explain was why I'm grinding, like why am I doing all this, why push me towards. So this is kind of where I get all my thumbnails. Just go into random Discord servers and pick out what I'm trying to stream. And also, join this and just be in the general chat. So start off. Why study? Why grind? Right now I make 40K. I'm grinding to make more money. I got a couple of goals I want to accomplish in the next 2 years. Um, main one to get my certs and graduate. That's going to enable me to make more money, and that money, like, we live in a capitalist society, and like even if I'm not a material person, if I want safety and to get things, I'm gonna have to make some. Even the money I get, it's mainly gonna go into my move out. I'm still gonna maintain the same lifestyle I have. Oh, I don't have a bed. I just downgraded my car to a moped in Chicago where it's known to freeze because I don't want to pay insurance and repairs. It's just too costly for me. A moped cost me $450. That in 4 months, or probably even less than that, because of repairs and gas. In 3 months, I'm going to be able to replace the value of my car, which, in my opinion, is a good investment. So I got that. I got that goal. It's definitely get more money and save up. And another goal is to bring my body to maintenance. I think. Um, so I recently did push-ups on my last stream, and I was pretty weak while I was doing that. Um, it's just if you. So what I'm trying to explain is like I lost a lot of muscle mass, but I think maintaining a good body is really important. Something you can be proud of. I think a lot of guys don't have self-confidence because of how they look, but another interesting thing is even if you do have a good body, like your confidence comes from internally, and that's really what I'm trying to build. It's like, am I doing my workouts? I don't really care how I end up looking. I just want to make sure every day I'm doing yoga to make sure I'm not getting seriously injured. Two, I want to run. I think having an excellent cardio is good in any sort of situation, and it's good overall. Three, lift. You want to have that strength as a man for whatever purpose. I've been lifting since like 2020, probably 2021, and for like the first 2 years, it's like, especially as an end, you don't have the greatest genetics, you don't have the greatest diet, and you definitely don't have the greatest discipline when it comes to working out because you don't really see your parents, or there's not a big push for athleticism, so it's all on you really. But the first time I picked up one of my friend's suitcases, he's like, "That's gonna be heavy, bro," and I just picked it up with ease. Like, it was still heavy, but you become a lot stronger. I think that's important. And it's something to be proud of. And if you want to have a long life, like I do, and most people do, then you're gonna want to maintain your muscles because as you age, your muscles are the support your joints and their movements. Having weak joints and having muscles that you don't use, especially like if you already have a sedentary like career and lifestyle like me, where I'm sitting, 8 hours on my computer, you're gonna want to have build those things just to maybe uh, push off the inevitable aging and deterioration of your muscles. Another thing is, if you're like me, it doesn't matter if you're a girl or a guy. If you're in your 20s, this is probably the most testosterone you'll ever have. So you want to take advantage of that and just build that up while you have the chance to. Once you hit 30, it starts declining. So maintain, the peak physique, and then, or like build up a peak physique, and then sort of maintain that as you progress in life. everyone knows that like having an ability as a guy is pretty dangerous because one thing in this life is you have a momentum, you have a thought pattern, you have how you think, and that really carries into it trickles down into every decision you take. As soon as you start becoming lazy with your body, your diet, then you start becoming lazy with work, and you start becoming lazy with your relationships. Like, oh, okay, I don't really want to express my feelings because it takes too much effort, or I don't really want to clean up, and then these it becomes once people can't tell out what you're doing, then you become too unpredictable. You're it's going to create a bad taste because they don't know what to expect of you. So make sure you're keeping up with your discipline and your body. So those are things I want to do. And like I think I'm like around 220 pounds, but ever since I've been dieting and probably working out, I think I've started boxing. Recently, I had to stop because of my work schedule, or at least I was inconsistent because I wasn't prepared for my work schedule. Um, yeah, I think I lost a few pounds. My goal is to get 180. Um, I think pushing myself to compete in MMA is pretty important because it gives me a goal. Um, and honestly, I do like the sport as much as the brain trauma and the injuries do scare me. I think I never really got a chance to get really good at sports. Like every time I tried to, a couple limiting factors is if you don't have like the right support around you or you didn't grow up playing something, it's gonna be very hard for you to like just get good at something out of nowhere. A lot of people that end up being good at sports, or like playing in high school, like they've been doing that. They've had friends like, and I did that with league. Like that's how I treated it. But I know I didn't really have that sort of support environment around me to play sports. But now I do. Now I don't need a support environment because I am the support environment. I can create that for myself. When you're a child, it's like wherever your house is kind of that's all you really have, and whatever your parents are able to support, that's really all you have. You can't do that by yourself, or at least that's what I believe. But no, it doesn't matter anymore. I can do whatever I want. So when I try to compete in MMA, I'm like 22. I'm not gonna go very far. Maybe I'll get an amateur fight or two. And I'm not like I've tried to train twice, right? Like I'm not the most prospective like rookie. Like I come into the gym, I'm kind of a loser. Like I can't do the drills. I can't really punch. I don't have shit eye coordination, hand and eye coordination, and I'm not really good at showing up. Like anytime things get serious, like at my first training experience was I think it was at wrestling. They had me do a workout where it was like climb the ropes. All the guys could climb the ropes, and I just couldn't. At that time, I should have realized like, hey, if you it doesn't matter what you do, if you like stay consistent with it, you'll get there. Like coding, cybersecurity, all the things you're scared of, like talking to women, talking to the opposite gender, I gotta say, they're all scary things. Getting a first job, having a first baby, getting money, cooking. Like you're gonna be shit at it regardless. If I knew that at that time, maybe I would have stuck later, stuck more. But that's like a hurdle. You join something and you realize you're complete shit, but you realize that everyone else was also complete shit at one time, and the longer you keep showing up, the better you'll do. I know like even dropping a week off of like learning something, you're gonna be a lot worse. Like I can go a week without skipping rope, and then the next Monday I step in the gym, I'm going to be terrible. So these are sort of habits that build up. Besides that, probably the biggest motivation for me was or is still is to create a family and like a stable and happy family, and that comes internally from like me believing that I sort of missed out on like, my I was born in 2001, and we had a pretty peaceful family, or at least I believe so. As a child, you don't pay too much attention to these things, right? Or you don't know what's going on. But around 2008, my parents sort of split up. Like my dad still like supports us financially and tries his best. But my mom decided to just take us to India, and at the time, you don't realize what's happening, but they couldn't work things out, and my mom really couldn't adapt to the U.S. My dad had ambitions, right? Like he wanted to come to the U.S. and he wanted to be successful, and he was like for a guy that came straight out of a village, he really made it work. Now he's like playing golf and he's enjoying his life, even though it might be a little lonely, but he made his vision work. My mom could not make that work together, and I feel like as two adults come together to start something like family, there should be a compromise, and I don't know. There's too many variables to explain what happened or what could have gone wrong, but there's no point in it doing it right now. What I'm from it though is uh, I don't really have the best upbringing, and I want to do better for my children and for my future wife and for whoever it might be, right? My future partner. Like all I know is that was beta, and like I can do a better version, and that's what I'm gonna do. So another goal for me is to meet a beautiful girl, and um, that's like not only beautiful but in every aspect of life. Like, and that's also the person I'm trying to be. I want to be beautiful. I want to create things and look good and smell good and be smart and be knowledgeable and be anti-fragile. Anti-fragility is like a concept that I learned about like 2 years ago. It's essentially like you as a human kind of go through life, but then things hit you, like things that you don't expect. It's like how do you, and it's inevitable. Like no matter where you are in the social hierarchy, financial poverty, like you're gonna get hit with challenges. Um, so how do you not only overcome them but become better every time you get hit by one of those? So that's something, that's the mindset I want to adopt. Like I'm really gonna try my best, but I know I'm gonna face challenges. But will I be strong enough to face those challenges? Um, that's what I'm worrying about. Not trying to live the perfect life or um, avoid problems, but to rather face them. And then how well am I prepared to face them? That's what I want my focus on. And to do that, you gotta have uh, mental, social, financial, physical stability to even consider trying a challenge. Um, and I'm not worried about what challenges are going to come right now. I'm not going to try to be like it. I want to go to the moon or some shit. Like something will push us in the future. I just need to be ready for that. Part of I feel is having a partner is it's not only a partner but deep relationships in life. Like some of my friends have genuinely changed how I want to live my life for the better. The Dexter, Malik, my friends from India, my online friend I met through cybersecurity, Alan and like no fatigue. Like these guys, they haven't even like really like done this on purpose. Like they haven't been like, hey Andy, you gotta get your shit together. It's never ever been like that. It's like I see what's possible through their eyes, and then they share that with me through human experiences, right? And so now I want to be closer to them, and I hope to do that with any friend I have in the future. I think human relationships. I think there's a big study in Europe that's been going on for around 80 years, um, and biggest. Um, yeah, it's a Harvard study, and it's like what really determines the happiness or the success of your life in genetic success, right? Like getting born into a good family or being born in a good zip code. Like I think Chicago's a pretty good zip code, but or you're a black guy that's like 6'8" and you're LeBron James. Like those are nice, but um, as the article points out, it's like people that have satisfied relationships in their 50s were the healthiest of their 80s because loneliness is probably not necessarily a disease, but it drives you crazy, right? So to avoid that, not necessarily avoid that, but to connect with other human beings is beautiful, and that's what I want to strive for, whether that be through a family or through friends or through a community. Uh, that's fine. That's fine with me. That's my goal. But to do that, you sort of at least as a man, you sort of have to have a spine. You have to stand for things. You have to understand where you're coming from and be part of that. You have to go ask out women and initiate conversations and relationships and then maintain them and make them better. Um, and that's how you push everyone. If you can't do that, then you can't want it. Uh, so I think that's my goal. And at least for the next 2 years, I'm really gonna hone in on being disciplined, and that discipline's gonna be working 16 hours a day. I think this is probably the only part of my life I'll be able to do this. Maybe probably I'm not until I'm like 60, but at that point, if I'm 60, like, why do I want to work, right? Maybe I could. I don't know. Who knows? You are really aren't working your entire life, but when I come to corporate paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, I think in your 20s, it's probably the best time once you get a girlfriend or a family. You know, getting a girlfriend usually leads to having a family, and then once you have a family, you're tied down. Like you don't have much mobility. You have a lot less time, and you don't have mental capacity to all into something. So all in into what I'm trying to do right now uh, is my primary goal. And just a couple of key milestones. I want to break. I want to get 200K per year. Um, I'm at 40K now. I'm probably in the low tier of like every IT, like the hierarchy, and that's fine. Everyone's got to start from somewhere. I don't have a college degree. Most of my peers are graduated. Like I'm 22. I've had a chance to finish that since I was 18, right? But I spent like the first few years playing league and jerking off to porn and eating junk food and just all the bad habits that people of my time know about. And I had all those bad habits, and I didn't even get a girlfriend. Actually, I did. So, but it was not productive at all. Like it went nowhere. I think having productive relationships are really important. Something you learn from each other and something you guys can create together. So I did definitely miss out on some time. Why? The entire time it was eating me up, I was like, hey, why can't I, what can I do better? Like, why can't I do the things I want to do? And that's what books. Sorry, I just saw your message, man. S- So why can I do this shit, man? But I'm back. I really like broke down everything in my brain, wrote down all my negatives, solved them one by one, and then I learned how to learn. And the way I did that was reading the book How to Learn. And I recommend this for anyone that wants to learn. It's this course, and there's a book by Barbara Oakley, and this really got me started on my journey. And then I learned about IT certs. It's like I'll put the book in the link once I'm done with the stream. But she wrote the book, and it's probably one of these. Learn like a pro or how to learn. Mine for numbers is also really good. For that, not that it helped me with math. I'm still shit at it. But again, math is just like a skill you gotta get good at visualizing. That's something I'll definitely tackle in the future. Sort of industry I'm in, it requires that you're able to close your eyes, visualize a problem, think of different entities, and then come up with a solution. And I think the only thing that really can build up that foundation is, actually solving problems is math because you encounter problems the whole time. And you really have to build yourself up to do that. And not pure maths, just, mental maths. If you're not good at that, then it's a pretty bad, big drawback. Uh, so yeah, let's just go through the video and then we'll get to back the box.
Uh, People would ask, but them ate mostly plant-based foods, like vegetables.
There you go. So here he's explaining like as a neurosurgeon, he operates on people's spines or deteriorated fucking muscles, bones, all that. And he's telling us who are the most likely people to recover? Because a lot of times these surgeries are last ditch efforts to like solve a problem, but the problem is usually not solved by the surgery. It's just a quick human patch that we can put together. The problem is caused by, years of abuse of their body, their out like their mind. So how do you solve it? You got to change your habits, and your the habits describing. Uh,
but
you can
not
listen to.
not in the way that I thought. Not in the way that I thought when I was training. And so over 9 years, I did everything I could try to do to try to figure out, wait, how do people actually get better and how do they get worse? And I had help along the way. I had a really good partner who was a pain management doc at my first job, and he really clued me into a lot of the things I'm going to explain here. But I just started asking patients,
So I really
you know,
recommend anyone get a journal.
what do
It
you
took me a
smoke?
long time to
What do you eat? What do you drink? Do you smoke?
start the
Do
habit
you
of
use
it,
drugs? Do you
but
have a lot of friends? Do you
it's
have
really
a family?
useful.
Are you stressed out? Do you sleep well? I just would ask all my patients just kind of this whole bunch of questions about their life. And what I found was that
Helps you get better.
patients that did certain things would get better, and patients who wouldn't do those things would get worse. Or my surgery might help them out a little bit, but they would get worse after that. Uh, and those things that I saw were the following. It's people that got better, people that healed. They were doing the following, and not exactly, but in general. And this is my observation. They were having a diet. Well, diet seemed to be the most important. The food that people ate and the liquids they drank. The ones that would heal up, they had a low salt diet. Like not, it wasn't really salty, and most of
Low
them
salt
ate
diet.
mostly plant-based foods. Like vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans. And this is not like a vegan rant or anything. I'm not vegan.
Plant
I enjoy a steak or a
based
sushi every once in a while. I'm just
diet.
describing what I saw over 9 years of doing spine surgery. The people that got better were having a mostly plant-based diet. They weren't eating too much animal foods, and they were definitely not eating salty. And they would do things that would make them sweat, like exercise, being outside, hiking like this, going to a sauna, um, or they live in a warm place. Uh, they didn't smoke. They didn't drink much. They usually had good social support, like loved ones,
No
family
drink.
members,
No
children,
smoke.
friends, um, like a way to socialize. They would sleep. They would sleep like 8 hours every day, and they weren't stressed out. Or if they had a stressful job or something, they found a way to be mindful or meditate or like just be present and release the stress back into the universe. Um, that's what I saw, and I saw that the people who did that, they would heal so quickly that I couldn't operate on them. I mean, sometimes I could, but if I was booked like 3 or 4 weeks out, a lot of times people would they were doing that. They would heal before I could do the surgery that I thought would fix the problem. And the opposite was true. Patients that so they smoked like a chimney. They sat on the couch and they ate hot dogs all day. They had no friends. They were super stressed out, and they didn't sleep well. Yeah, those patients, like I could do a really good surgery. I would get them temporarily better, but 6 months, a year later, the same part of their back would have a recurrent problem, or a different joint in their back would have a similar problem. And I would operate on them, and they might get better for 6 months, and then yeah, then the same thing would happen. So it's the leaky roof problem. So that was my aha moment. It's like, oh, I know what's going on. Wait, to actually heal, you need to like eat a certain way, sleep a lot, not be stressed out, have a good social network, exercise, move your body, stretch. If you do all those things, you heal. And when your body heals, it doesn't just heal a worn out joint in your neck or your back. It heals everything. It heals a worn out joint in your neck, your back. It heals a skin problem. It heals your digestive tract problem. It heals your hair issues. When your body heals, it heals everything. And that actually became a huge problem. And let me explain why that's a huge problem. Because most people will say, wait, how's that a problem that you figured out how people are healing? Uh, it's a problem because our medical system isn't set up this way. I'm not knocking any hospital or group that I worked with. I've had the privilege to work with really amazing people in amazing hospitals, amazing institutions. But the way that everything is set up in the whole country, it's not any particular hospital. The way things are set up
So yeah,
is that
the points he makes are
it is a beautiful.
how do you get better? Um, and this really solves a lot of issues, like a lot of mental issues. I wouldn't say a lot of physical. I think a lot of physical issues are very specific problems, but before you get to that point, or even if you did have physical problems, this would for sure help everything else, right? Something could be weighing you down, but overall, uh, your body should be a lot better. So that's low salt diet. What does that look like? Um, let's ask ChatGPT. What is a low salt plant-based diet? Fruits and veggies, whole grain, legumes, nuts and seeds, healthy fats, and then for meat, I would go with when people still need protein. I would still go with chicken and fish, white meat. How bad are steaks? I just thought these days. I honestly don't think they're that bad because we've been eating them for what, fucking billions of years. Like, I do have cholesterol issues, so I can't really be eating too much fats. I mean, this shit's just unhealthy, like bacon and sausage. Like nobody's eating that shit. It's just fucking fat as shit. Um, Definitely lots of veggies and fruits, and then protein, carbs. Just however you really cook them. It's super important. So let's go through Mars and end up how your body heals
Full
episode.
day, and I choose to live with you. I'm Gooby. I used to be a neurosurgeon, and now I'm a person trying to find a way to live that takes care of my whole being and the living beings around me. This is the first episode in a series that I intend to make called Help Your Body Heal. And in this first episode, I will talk about plants, meat, and carbs. And the other title to this is My Mama Said That Carbs Are the Devil. Well, my mom didn't actually say those words, but I would imagine Bobby Foucher's mom in The Waterboy, Adam Sandler's movie The Waterboy, would have said that. And I kind of have heard a lot of people say something like that. So I wanted to talk about diet, because I think really the food that we eat is the first and most important step to healing.
I wish I could fucking
And
4x the
I would like to
shit.
share what I have learned over the last, well, my whole life really. So I've been alive for 40 years, so 4 decades. But I've really learned a lot over the last 10 years while I was practicing medicine as a neurosurgeon. Now, a lot of people will say, why is a neurosurgeon talking about nutrition? He should stick to his lane and talk about cutting. And I accept that. I accept that that's how people might feel. Uh, but I think I did learn some valuable things in nearly a decade of practicing neurosurgery focused on taking care of degenerative disc disease. What that is, that's a fancy word, but what that means is the body couldn't heal the joint in the spine. And there's many joints in the spine. Every bone in the spine has 3 joints that connect it to the next bone. And if the body's not healing well, those joints break down. That can cause pain in the joint, like in the neck or back. It can cause a disc, which is the cartilage between the bones, to bulge out or herniate out and pinch nerves. It can cause nerve problems like pain, numbness, or weakness. It can cause a number of things. It can cause spinal cord injury, but those are the things that I saw. And the reason why I'm talking about nutrition is because I saw patients heal at different rates. Some patients healed really quickly, and they healed themselves before I could operate on them, so they healed without surgery. And other patients would not heal well, and even with a technically perfect surgery, they would get worse. So that's why ex-neurosurgeon, I'm not practicing anymore, that's why an ex-neurosurgeon is talking about nutrition. So this might be a little bit of a longer video, so I'm going to give you a quick outline of what I'm going to talk about so that you can have an idea of what's coming, and you can skip ahead too if you want to go to a certain spot in this talk. The first thing I want to talk about is my background, how I grew up, how I learned to eat, what my family, how my family eats, and then fast forward to residency, and then when I was practicing neurosurgery, and how I saw patients heal quickly and learned what they did, which was a number of things, but most important I think was the diet. So yeah, I'm going to talk about my background, what I learned from my patients, what I experienced myself when I started doing what they were doing. Oh, I think I got a visitor. Hi, Doobie. Doobie, good
Doobie and
morning.
doobie.
Oh, Doobie just woke up. She's drinking some water. So the third thing was talking about my own experience doing the things that I saw my patients do, and then me learning what evidence is out there. I guess Doobie wants to say hi. You can say hi. Good morning, girl. So the fourth part is talking about what evidence is out there and what other doctors have seen and experienced anecdotally and in very detailed, well thought out research studies. And I'll end with what I think is the most important research paper that I think I've ever seen on diet. So those are the 5 things, and so we'll get started with the first one. So I'm Korean by heritage. I was actually born here in the United States. Both of my parents are Korean immigrants. They came over when they were in high school. And for the vast majority of my childhood, I grew up in Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a state in the middle of the United States, and it's considered the Midwest. And so for people who aren't from the United States, Oklahoma is known for farmland, for cattle, for like corn and wheat fields. Yeah, it's kind of like a regular American kind of living. So when I was growing up, I ate Korean food, and Korean food is known for really yummy meat. Like I'm sure some people have been to Korean barbecues before, and Koreans are really good at marinating meat, whether it's beef, pork, chicken, and also preparing fish in a really yummy way. And most Koreans eat white rice, not brown rice. So the Koreans also eat a fermented cabbage called kimchi. So growing up, the way that I ate with my family is that the meat dish or the fish is the centerpiece of the meal, and everything revolves around that. And you can have some white rice with it, and then some vegetables, to be healthy. But the main thing was the animal protein, because what I learned when I was a kid is you need protein to grow. And that's what I was taught as a kid, and I'll explain later that maybe that's not the best way to do things, but it is a way. And I've survived till now. I'm 40 years old, so that way got me to at least my 30s. So I went to college. I went to medical school. Medical school. Medical school is very interesting. I went to a good medical school. I don't know what the ranking is now, but I think it's still in the top 10. So I had a very good education, in my opinion, for that time. And I learned a lot of like anatomy and how the body works and how the body can break down. But one thing that was really lacking, in my opinion, was learning about nutrition and how it can prevent problems. From my recollection, now this was a while ago, because my first year medical school classes were in 2004. That's 20 years ago. From my recollection, I only had, I think, maybe 4 hours total of lectures on nutrition. I think some on vitamins, some on, it was more focused on like vitamins, carbohydrates, lipids, how are they structured, why your body needs them. So it was really kind of like breaking down the food into its chemicals and trying to understand why we need those chemicals, rather than really focusing on what types of foods might be good or bad.
Yeah, makes sense. You're not a
What's good or bad,
nutritionist.
helpful for the
What the
body to
fuck
heal
would that
or
matter?
not heal. So I don't remember a class on that. So that was the state of medical education in 2004 at a top tier medical school. Now I don't know what medical school education is like now, and I sure hope that there's more of a focus on what I'm about to talk about in this video. So I went to medical school. My thoughts on diet didn't change like really at all, based on the very small amount of classes that were taught on nutrition. So I went to residency in neurosurgery, and the first time I was confronted with the fact that, well, maybe the way that I'm eating, the way I learned to eat, might not be very helpful for my body, was when I was eating lunch with one of my resident colleagues. He is a really, really smart man. He was a year above me in residency, and he's now a professor of spine surgery at university. And we were sitting at the cafeteria in the hospital, and residents are really busy, so it's kind of rare to be able to sit down and just chat for a while. But for some reason, we had time that day, and I got a big slice of pizza. Like I think it was like that big, like huge, like the size of my face, slice of pizza, thick crust, lots of cheese, and everything on it: sausages, pepperoni, peppers, mushrooms, olives. Yeah, it looked amazing, and it tasted really good too. But my friend said, that's gonna kill you, right? And I was like, well, okay, sure. I mean, pizza isn't the healthiest food. I mean, I guess it could be a salad or something. But I thought that was kind of strange that he would say that to me while I was eating. Kind of makes me feel bad about what I was eating. And that really, for some reason, I remember that, even though it didn't really change how I ate at the time. And then I went to residency. I was gaining weight because I was stressed out, and you don't sleep much in residency, or at least you didn't back then. I think that was right when there were some work hour limitations, because before people would work like 100, 120 hours a week. But when I started residency, they instituted an 80-hour work week limit, which we really tried to stay under, but we were always at 80 hours, or maybe slightly higher. But 80 hours is what we're supposed to do, and we were pretty good about keeping to that. But that means you don't sleep very much. So I didn't sleep much. I ate the same way that I had been eating as a kid and young adult, and I gained weight, and I started to develop some neck and back pain when I would operate. Because when you do spine surgery, the patient is laying on their belly. So imagine here's a patient. You put them down. Here's their head, their face. You put them face down on a table, and then you stand next to them. You stand next to them like this, and you look over, and you operate inside their back, right in there. So I spent all day standing up. I'm wearing my PJs, by the way. I stand all day. Actually, I have to sit like this. in a half stand. It's kind of uncomfortable. Stand all day, and I'd be looking down like this, operating with my fingers. And because spine surgery has a lot of X-rays, you have to wear lead. So you're wearing a lead vest and skirt and a neck protector, and then you got a headlamp on your head that's attached to a light box, so you got a weight on your head, and then you spend literally all day and all morning, all afternoon, sometimes into the evening, like this, making very fine movements with your fingertips and being super focused. Well, that is not a good posture. And at the end of the day, my neck would hurt and my low back would hurt. And I was in my late 20s, and I started to develop that, which was ironic because I was trying to help people fix their necks and backs, and my neck and back was getting worse. So I finished residency, and then I took my first job, and I was practicing and trying to help people with their back. And then a second time, a colleague of mine called out how I was eating. This guy is, I'm very grateful I met him. He is, well, he was a pain medicine specialist, so an anesthesiologist trained in helping people with pain, usually in the joints. So he'll do injections. He's since retired, but he really helped me learn the important things that I'm about to share with you. He really started me on this path of learning something that I didn't know was important at the time. But when I started that job, he invited my wife and I out with his wife, and he took us out to Korean food. And then I ordered my favorite dish at the time, which is spicy pork marinated with my rice. And a huge plate of spicy pork came out, white rice, and I was eating it. I was so happy that this thing looked delicious. And then he said the same thing that my really smart colleague in residency said. He said, "You know that's going to kill you, right?" And same thought in my head came up. I was like, wow, that's kind of a mean thing to say to someone who's just about to enjoy this meal. And I thought in my head, well, okay, this is red meat. I know you're not supposed to eat too much red meat, but that's kind of a hyperbole to say it's going to kill me. But I really respect that guy, and I know that he's a really good-hearted person. So I just started asking him. I was like, "What do you mean by that? And why don't you eat meat?" And he really started talking with me about how eating certain ways can help you heal quickly, or not heal quickly, or not heal at all. And that really kind of like set a light bulb off, because at that time I was beginning my practice, and I was doing surgeries that I learned to do, and I learned to do them well, and I was gaining more experience. I was getting better at doing these surgeries, and I do have a somewhat obsessive personality. I don't think I have OCD, but I definitely do obsess over things I really like. And so I would obsess over doing a surgery the very best way possible. And I thought that I was doing surgery, I was learning to do surgery, I think, technically well. And of course, I made some mistakes in the beginning, and at the end too, but I was getting, I thought, pretty good. But despite that, some patients would get better, some would get worse, some would stay the same after doing what I thought was the equivalent surgery for each person. And it was a little bit of a mystery to me. Now in residency, they do teach us some stuff about how the body heals without surgery. But the focus really is on how to do a surgery well, like how to cut well, how to drill well, how to choose the right patient that would benefit from surgery. And there is a very famous study done in neurosurgery called the SPORT trial, S-P-O-R-T. And this is kind of the extent to which we learn about how patients can heal without surgery. In this study, they looked at people with disc herniations and whether they get surgery or if they have maximal medical therapy. That's like physical therapy, medications, rest, exercise, stretches, maybe chiropractor, maybe acupuncture. But they looked at all patients. They divided them into patients that got surgery and patients that did not have surgery. And then they looked at them 2 years later. And what they found was that at 2 years later, it really didn't matter whether you had surgery or not, because everyone was about the same. Most people got better. They did find that patients that were in such severe pain they couldn't walk, or had weakness in the nerve because the nerve was being pinched so bad, they benefited from surgery because it took away the pain quicker, and it prevented some permanent weakness in most cases. So in surgery we learned, okay, in residency we learned that the people that would benefit from disc herniation surgery are people that are in just such severe pain they can't move, they can't even get out of bed, or the ones with weakness in a muscle that's innervated by the nerve that's being pinched by the bulging disc. And the flip side to that is that some people, actually a lot of people, get better without surgery if you give them enough time. All right, so I did learn that in residency. But what I didn't learn was that people heal at different rates based off of what they do. And sometimes, actually all the time, that's more powerful than the surgery tools that I have to help people. So I did not learn that in residency. I learned that after residency. And I talked a little bit about what that meant for me and whether to continue doing surgery or not. That was another video that went viral. But this video is really focused on how I learned how people heal quickly. So when my pain medicine partner said, or told me about, oh, yeah, you can heal quicker or slower based off of what you eat. I said, what? Oh, maybe that's why some of my patients get better, some of them get worse, and some stay the same. So at that time, this was maybe 1 year into practice, I started just asking my patients all kinds of stuff, starting with, what do you normally eat? And do you eat primarily vegetables, fruits, fatty stuff, carbohydrates? Do you avoid carbs? Yeah, I started asking that, and then of course I already was asking, do they smoke, do they do drugs? And then I added, how much do you sleep? Are you really stressed out? And Much later, I added, what's your social situation? Like, do you have friends? What's your relationships with your family? And then even later, years later, I start talking about, well, what do you do for stress? Are you really anxious? Things like that. But the first was, what do you eat? That's where I started. And then I just kind of kept a mental note for each patient. Actually, sometimes I would write it down in the chart so that I could remember. But yeah, I would keep a mental note of what patients ate primarily. And then I would just follow them. Because when you see a patient in clinic, you can't do surgery right away unless they came into the ER, the emergency room, and they need emergency surgery. That's a different situation. But usually in clinic, I was seeing patients with neck and back problems. It could be neck and back pain. It could be a pinched nerve causing numbness or weakness in arms or legs or walking or balance. And I would mentally keep track of how they do over time. So if someone needs surgery, I would recommend surgery and then schedule them for, usually it was about for anywhere from like 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes the patient schedule required it to be even farther out, like 2 months out from when we decided to have surgery. Other times I would say, oh, well, you should do some more conservative management, and I would recommend like physical therapy or going to a chiropractor or a pain management or physical medicine rehab doctor who could do injections of steroid into different parts of the spine, and then I would see them back after that. So that would take a month or two to get scheduled for the injection, get the injection, and then have at least a couple weeks to see if the injection helped. So this was a good way, well, inadvertently it was a good way to see what happens to people over months. And I noticed that the patients who said that they ate a lot of vegetables and fruits, they would heal quickly. And what I mean by that is a lot of times they would call me like a week before their surgery was scheduled and say that their pain went away. Their leg pain and numbness went away and they could walk again normally. Or if it was in the neck, the arm pain got better. And that was always surprising to me because a lot of times these patients were really miserable when I saw them in clinic. I mean, they were disabled. And so when they call me like 3 weeks after I see them and they say, oh yeah, my pain's better, do I still need surgery? I have a huge disc herniation on the MRI, don't I need to get that out? And most of the time I would say, well, if your pain's better, we don't need to do surgery. But sometimes the patients would not be completely better, maybe like 90% better, and they had a huge disc herniation on their MRI. And so they would say, well, I still have a little bit of lingering stuff, and I know the MRI has a huge disc herniation, so I'd rather just get it out. And so I would say, well, okay, since you're still having symptoms, let's just do the surgery. So I take them to surgery, I'd open them up, cut them open, and then I'd get down to the spine, open up the spine with a drill, and then under the microscope, it's a huge microscope, and it takes up the whole room, and it's a boom that comes over the patient, and I can see with 2 eyes, so in 3D, I can see down into this tiny tube. The tube is 18 millimeters, so less than 2 centimeters, and it's long, it's like this long. So I'm operating through smaller than inside of a toilet paper roll. So I'm using a microscope to see in there. And these patients that got like 90% better and they were healing well, a lot of times when I go in there, I would see that the disc herniation was gone. I'd have the MRI on the wall TV, and I can see the big disc herniations pinching the nerve, and then I'd be looking with a microscope into the person's back, and I'm actually looking, I can see the hole where the disc herniation came out of. I can maybe see a little bump where it came from, but it's gone. The nerve is fine. The nerve sits in a little tube, and the tube is fully inflated with water. There might be a little bit of red next to the covering of the tube where the disc herniation had irritated the nerve, but it wasn't pinched anymore. So in the 3 weeks between me seeing them and them being horribly disabled and them wanting
What's
surgery, me
up,
agreeing to it,
viewer?
and the time that they ended up having surgery because they still had 10% of symptoms or so, their body had dissolved that
Honestly,
big hunk of cartilage
the
that was sitting
future I hope my
on the nerve.
son or daughter gets to see this shit.
That was always interesting to me, and actually it was a little frustrating because
And everything I
it was
speak
frustrating
in
because
these streams, I feel like I'll
when you
do.
go into surgery and then you go down to the spine and you don't find what you're looking for, you have to be 100% certain that you were in the correct space and you didn't operate on the wrong part of the spine that was normal. That would be a huge no-no. And so these surgeries were mystifying and frustrating at the same time because I would have to spend extra time to look around and really feel everywhere and make sure that I didn't miss the disc herniation, that it wasn't like tucked away somewhere else, or I'd have to shoot an x-ray and make sure that I was at the exact place that I'm supposed to be at. But yeah, so some people, they could heal, and those people were usually doing, they're eating a lot of vegetables and fruit, and not too much animal foods, and they weren't eating salty, because I did have patients that were vegan, so they didn't eat any animal foods, but I had patients that didn't heal well in their spine as vegans, and they were eating very salty with lots of processed foods, so foods with extra added salt and sugars. So being vegan by itself does not guarantee that you'll heal well. It's really eating whole foods, so the actual plant or veggie rather than the processed version of it. So if you think of an orange is healthy to eat, but if you squeeze it out and you just take orange juice, that's not as healthy. Another better example is a potato. You boil a potato, and just eat it plain. That's actually really healthy. Actually, one large potato is about 1/5 of the protein you need for the whole day. And yeah, plants do have protein, and I'll go into that later. But if you had
What?
5 large potatoes, which would be
Which protein is fucking...
I think, a really boring way to eat for the whole day. But if you had 5 large potatoes, you would get the minimum protein that you need for the whole day. So
What?
a whole food is
It's like 56. That makes no sense. You would have to eat like 50
is
fucking
you're taking the actual
potatoes.
plant, the vegetable or
Or no,
fruit or grain,
25.
and you're eating the
But
whole thing. Now for grains, that's oh, I want to go back to the potatoes. So a whole potato is healthy. It has a lot of sugar, so it's not maybe not the best food. Uh, uh, but my point to this is, if you take it and you slice it up into strips and you fry it and you douse it in salt, and then you dip that fried piece of potato that's doused in salt, and it's soaked up all the oil from the frying, and then you dip it in ketchup, which is tomatoes mixed with salt and sugar, and then you eat that. That's not very healthy. So you can have a potato and you can have a French fry. A potato is a whole food. A French fry is a processed food. So both are vegan. Both don't have any animal foods in them. But the potato helps you heal. The French fry doesn't help you heal. Or potato chip is similar. It won't help you heal. Um, so what I learned from my patients is that if you eat whole foods, mostly plant-based, most of my patients were not vegan. They ate animal foods once in a while, like once a week or once a month, maybe twice a week. But they weren't eating much. They were really focusing on whole food, plant-based foods, and watching the salt. When they did that, they healed really quickly. So quick that I couldn't operate on them. And the benefit of that is that if they heal without surgery, there's no scar tissue. Because when I do a surgery, even if I do it the perfect way, just by going down through the skin and fat and muscle, down to the bone, through the bone, and work around the nerves, I create scar tissue around that whole path, all the way down to around the nerves. And sometimes just the scar tissue can wrap around a nerve and cause permanent nerve pain, that's awful. Because you can't cut out scar, because as soon as you cut on scar, you make more scar. So patients that have that problem, like they had a good surgery, the problem was fixed, but then the scar wraps around the nerve and squeezes it, and then they end up with lifelong nerve pain. They cannot be fixed, except with alleviated with medicines. And there's some other ways to deal with it, but surgery, no matter how you do surgery, you will develop scar tissue. If you can heal without surgery, then you can heal without a scar, and the body can function normally. So there is a huge advantage to helping your body heal these problems. My experience is in joint problems in the back and neck. There's a huge advantage of your body healing things rather than a surgeon going in there and cutting it out and creating scar tissue. The body is way better of a surgeon than any human with a knife can be. So I learned that by talking with my patients and observing them and doing surgery in some cases.
why didn't you just do a
And at
fucking
that time, I was
study,
still having
bro?
neck and back pain after a long day of operating. Sometimes my surgeries would be, well, most of my surgeries, because they were mostly spine surgeries, they would be an hour and a half long. If I had to put screws and rods into a spine to fuse a joint, it would take me like 3 to 4 hours. Or if it was a really big surgery, like a brain tumor surgery, sometimes that would take me all day and into the night, starting at 7:30 in the morning and finishing sometime like around 9 or 10 p.m. Those were exhausting days. And I would have really bad neck pain and back pain. Sometimes I wake up with a crick in my neck and then have a stiff neck and not be able to turn my head very well, but I'd still go to clinic and try to help people with neck and back problems, even though I couldn't really move my neck very well. It's so ironic. But when I saw my patients start healing like this, then I tried that out too. I tried that out. I said, okay, well, what the heck? Well, this seems to work really well for a lot of people. Maybe I need to change the way I eat and just see what happens, because I got this neck problem and back problem. So my personality is to really dive headfirst into things. I have to use the restroom, so I have to come back. I'll be right back. All right, I am back from my potty break. So I was telling you about how I felt when I first started doing what my patients were doing.
Feel you,
So
dog.
the way I usually do things, this is my personality, is that I dive headfirst into something that I think might be good, just to try it out. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's actually not good and I get hurt. But I kind of do things in a little bit of an extreme way. Moderation is not something that I'm very good at. So when I first did what my patients were doing, I said, well, I'm going to just do the extreme version of what they're doing and go vegan and really avoid salt. So I went to the supermarket. I got a bunch of vegetables. I got like broccoli, cauliflower, zucchini, carrots, and then I just cooked them. I like steamed them or tried to sort of fry
Yep.
them but without oil.
Something I
Just with like a
really
thin layer of
fuck
water,
with.
and then I put some spices on it, and then at that time I would add a little salt. 'Cause I didn't understand the salt thing at that time, but I will talk about salt in the next episode. Uh, so I did that, and I just
This
threw it
shit
in with
is
vegetables and maybe a little more garlic.
goaded,
Uh,
bro. Like, it's
and
so
a
good.
couple
Oh
things
my
happened. Well, I lost weight
god.
really quickly, mainly because I probably wasn't getting enough calories at that time. And I think a lot of inflammation in my body calmed down. But I think I wasn't getting enough calories for the number of calories I was expending in the day. I didn't really know what I was doing at that time. But yeah, I lost weight. My body felt calmer, like more peaceful. I didn't have that general malaise, or malaise is just a bad feeling, like just uncomfortable. You just feel uncomfortable in your body, and or just not so good, that kind of feeling. That went away. And then I noticed that I could operate all day long and not have neck or back pain. But this did take, it wasn't immediate. It took about a month, so about 4 weeks. And during that 4 weeks, I farted a lot, a lot, a lot. Like just tooting the horn like non-stop, just walking and tooting the horn. And I'll talk about what's going on there. That'll be the third episode. It'll be called the farting episode. But there's something really important going on with the farting, or what was causing the farting, and this time period of 4 weeks, about 4 weeks. Uh, After 4 weeks, I could operate. I could operate all day and into the night and not have neck or back pain anymore. This was 9 years ago. Yeah, I was age 31 when I learned this from my patients and my partner. Uh, and so I thought, wow, this actually works. What my patients are doing worked for me, and I feel really good. And I lost a lot of weight, and I can move my body, and I don't feel bad all the time. In my body, at least. I was still struggling with mind loops of anxiety and fear, but my body felt good. Uh, Hi. Oh, okay. Oh, it's okay. Just do whatever you need. Yeah. What was I talking about? Yeah, my body felt good. And my patient showed me. Oh, hold on. We got a little interruption here. Okay. My patient showed me a way to help me heal my own spine, which I'm very grateful for. So thank you, patients, for showing me a way to heal my own spine. But I also found that it not only healed my spine, but it healed a lot of things. Like, what was very noticeable was my fingers. So my fingernails and my toenails, like the nail and the edge around, I think that's called the cuticle. I'm not sure the name of that, but where the skin and the nail meets would be way healthier than normal for me at that time. Instead of having like a bunch of skin tags, things were smooth and they looked normal. Um, and then my skin felt smoother. So those are the things I noticed, but mainly it's the neck and back pain I was the most grateful for because that was causing discomfort. So I saw what patients did, I tried it out myself, and it worked for me. And I was a spine surgeon, trying to help patients get better from spine problems with surgery. But now I had figured out a tool that might even be more powerful than surgery. And so I said, well, why not do both? Why not do surgery and tell patients they need to eat whole food, plant-based, with low salt? Well, in the beginning, I didn't know what I was doing, and I really took the wrong approach. I told patients, I'm like, hey, you got this problem. You could do surgery. It could make you better. It might make you worse.
My brother-in-law
in some situations, that. Other situations, you would have to do surgery because they were so far gone that they needed surgery. Otherwise, they'd be in a wheelchair the rest of their life. So those situations, I would still explain the plant-based diet thing. But I think a lot of people would just look at me with glazed eyes and like, why is the surgeon talking about the food I eat? This is a mechanical problem. There's a disc pinching a nerve. He just needs to cut it out. Why the heck is he telling me this? So I would get glazed over eyes. I'd get rolled eyes. Sometimes I would get anger because what people eat is so integral to who they are and the culture they come from and the family traditions they have. And so when someone says,
Sure.
hey, how you're eating, not good for you, that's that can be enraging. It doesn't feel good to hear that. So in the beginning, I was telling all the patients, hey, you need to do this. Otherwise, I mean, this problem might recur again. Even if I get you better with a good surgery, it might happen again. And so I would, at that time, I would take personal responsibility for the outcome. And the problem with that is that you can't choose something for someone else. It just doesn't work that way. You can't tell people, hey, you need to do this, and then it makes them do that. No, it doesn't work that way. In fact, if you tell someone, hey, you really need to do X, then they would sometimes be like, yeah, screw you, I'm not going to do that. And personally, I'm like that. If someone tells me to do something and they don't give me a good reason or a reason that I think is good enough, then I would sometimes just do the opposite just out of spite. It's not a good way to live, but that's just kind of how I work. So yeah, in the beginning, I didn't have a good way to tell patients about this information. But over time, I learned that everyone has their own choices to make. It's not my responsibility for what someone decides to do with their life, because that's their choice. If they want to live a certain way, then that's their choice, and I'm not responsible for those choices. At that time, I was responsible for doing a good surgery, doing the best surgery I could possibly do, in order to give them the best shot at having a good quality life. But it was kind of like a tug of war with me internally, because I felt like the surgery could help, but the diet was more powerful, and I didn't have control over what people ate, even if I told them the information. So yeah, towards the end of my practice, I would just explain to patients this is the experience that I've seen with other patients, and that if you do, when some patients they eat whole food plant-based with low sodium and they exercise, they get enough sleep, and they're not stressed out, and they have good social relations, they heal really quickly, and they usually don't need surgery. And the opposite is if someone just sits on the couch, eats pizza and hot wings, and smokes cigarettes, doesn't move around, doesn't have a social life, they don't have any friends, and they work a stressful job, they're not going to heal no matter what they do, even if it's a good surgery. They might be better for a few months, 6 months, and then they come back with the same problem. So I would just lay it out that way and say, hey, here's the information. This is what happens to people if they do this or that. And then I'd say, then we talk about surgery. And I would just leave it at that so that there was information there for people to see. And they could choose for themselves whether they wanted to do X or Y. And then I didn't take the responsibility on of what they chose. If they chose whatever they want, that's good. And I am a firm believer in diversity is good. So if everyone did the exact same thing, our species as a whole would not be strong, because in diversity you have strength. All kinds of things happen in life, so you want to have different ways of approaching life with different people. So I welcome diversity, but I also want people to know that there is some pathways up the mountain that are easier than other pathways. So other pathways might be, like the analogy of climbing a mountain. When you get to the top, there are established climbing routes that are easier than other routes. You can still climb a really difficult, dangerous route, but there's a good chance you might die and never reach the top. And so in presenting this data, I was showing a way to get up the mountain. That's not saying it's easy, but it's easier than maybe other paths.
Okay, dude.
So even at the end of my practice, all right, so I'm going to shift tracks now, and now I want to talk about, so once I figured this out, I looked to other doctors' experiences now, and for research. So the last part of this talk, I'm going to talk about a few doctors whose stories are very important to this topic. And then the last part is a medical paper I'm going to show on the computer with the data, because people want to know, yeah, sure, this is anecdotal information, what data is out there? So I'm going to show that at the end. So there are, well, there's two doctors I want to talk about in particular. No, three doctors. One is a PhD. That's the first one. Around the time that I was figuring this stuff out, there was a really cool documentary called Forks Over Knives. The title Forks Over Knives means you can heal yourself by eating with a fork rather than undergoing surgery, which is under a knife. So Forks Over Knives. That documentary, I think, is on Netflix. It's really good. In that documentary, I saw a doctor named Colin Campbell, and he's a PhD, I believe, in nutrition. And he did some interesting work. There's two things that he did that I found really interesting. One was a study where there's three things stories from Dr. Campbell. So the first story is, early on in his career, he went, I think, to the Philippines, and then he saw that the kids of rich parents were getting cancer at a much higher rate than the kids who were poor. And it was really strange to him, because the kids who were rich were getting more protein, and at that time, the real concern was getting enough protein. And so he thought that was really strange that the kids who were getting lots of protein, which in this case was animal protein, were getting more cancer than the poor kids. And then so that's the first story. The second story is that he looked at epidemiology data. That means looking at a large number of people over time in China. And then what he found was that different villages and cities and regions in China have different traditions for their diet. Some areas eat way more animal foods, some areas eat more plant-based foods, some areas eat more carbohydrate-heavy. Usually in general, Asian diets are pretty carbohydrate-heavy with the rice. But what he found was that the regions that were traditionally eating way more animal foods, they had much higher rates of cancer, just like he had seen with the rich kids early on in his career. So that's story number two, that regions that ate more animal foods for their protein rather than plant-based foods for protein had more cancer. And then the third story of his that I found really interesting was he tried to replicate this in the lab with rats. So he would feed rats three different things. One was protein from cow's milk, I think it was casein, and he'd feed the rats soy protein and a gluten, a wheat protein. And then he would induce liver cancer in these rats with a chemical that creates cancer. And then he would see what happened to them. And what he found was that the rats who were fed the milk protein, the casein, they all died from cancer. The ones that ate the soy or gluten protein, they still had some cancer in their livers, but they on average would live. And the cancers were there, but they wouldn't grow. If they at the end of the study, they would kill the rat and they'd open them up and look at the liver. There were some cancers there, but they weren't growing like in the rats that ate casein, the milk protein. So those are three very interesting stories and research done by Dr. Campbell. The second doctor I want to talk about is Dr. John McDougall. He's a medical doctor, and in his early career, he worked in Hawaii. So in Hawaii, what he noticed is that he was just taking care of the islander population. What he noticed was that there was a definite health disparity between generations. So the older generation, the ones who typically just immigrated, or who had immigrated from their native country somewhere in Asia, they tended to live a long life with minimal health problems and were skinnier. And then the next generation, the firstborn generation in Hawaii, they started to get more health problems, like diabetes, some heart disease, some cancer. They were a little overweight. And then their babies, so the grandkids of the immigrant, they tended to have lots of these health problems that are similar to a lot of American health problems: heart disease, stroke, diabetes, cholesterol issues, cancer, obesity. And he found that it was because the original immigrant, the grandparents, they still ate the way they used to eat when they were a child. But then the next generation started to eat a little bit more like the standard American diet. Standard American diet is SAD, SAD. Um, the grandchildren generation just ate the SAD diet, and their bodies were sad. Um, so that's Dr. John McDougall's story. And so Dr. McDougall, he now practices in Santa Clara, California, or Santa Rosa, Sonoma, somewhere in that area. He advocates for a whole food plant-based diet that is low in fat, and he says starches, carbohydrates are fine as long as they're whole foods. And that was very helpful to hear, because my mom has dealt with diabetes, and she tries to avoid carbs a lot. And the paper at the end of the talk is going to address that issue. Are carbs the devil or not? But Dr. John McDougall says, carbs are not the devil. They actually are very healthy, and you should be eating them. And it's okay to eat a lot of them, and try to minimize the amount of animal protein and fat. John McDougall actually helped. I emailed him early on in my career, and I asked him, hey, I'm a neurosurgeon. I see these things in my spine patients. Do you have any knowledge about how a plant-based diet might help heal spine problems? And he actually sent me 2 papers. This was maybe 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago. At the time, he wrote back to me and sent me 2 papers that were actually very helpful, and I will make an episode about that, which would be called, essentially how plant-based diet can help fix spine problems. Like, how does it actually fix spine problems? But I'll do that after the salt episode and the farting episode. So that's the second doctor I wanted to talk about. The third doctor is Dr. Greger, Greger. Greger. He's a really cool doctor who has a YouTube channel called Nutrition Facts, and a website. I think it's nutritionfacts.org. And what he does is he goes through all the latest research and just kind of breaks it down into an easy to understand but data-driven explanation for what might be good for you and what might be not good for you in terms of food. So Nutrition Facts, YouTube. I learned a lot from that channel. And Dr. Greger, and I've heard him talk at this, there's a plant-based nutrition conference that's done every year in California. I went last year, and it was awesome. I got to hear Dr. Greger and Dr. McDougall talk. I don't think Dr. Campbell was there, but a lot of other doctors who are experts in their fields share their stories and information and research. So if anyone's interested, especially if you're a medical professional, I highly recommend checking out International Plant-Based Nutrition Conference. It's done every year. It's actually coming up September 20th in Anaheim, California, and you can register online for virtual attendance, and you can get continuing medical education credits for that. So I intend to either attend this conference in person or virtually. I haven't decided yet, because I don't live in California, so it's a little bit of a trip. But Dr. Greger, he has an excellent book called How Not to Die. I like that title, How Not to Die. It's kind of funny because we all die, but this book is called How Not to Die. He's a funny guy, and very smart, and way smarter than I am about nutrition stuff. So I highly recommend checking out his channel, Nutrition Facts. Those are the 3 doctors I want to tell you about. And to end this first episode, this episode is really the longest because I have to explain all these things about how I got to understand this, and it's a long story. The other episodes will be shorter, probably, but maybe not. This is to conclude this talk. We are going to look at this study. This is published in The Lancet. It's available for free. The title is called Dietary Carbohydrate Intake and Mortality, a prospective cohort study and meta-analysis. That's a bunch of research speak for. We did a very carefully constructed research study to try to eliminate biases and try to find the truth. Okay? Prospective cohort study, meta-analysis. It means they start at a certain time and they look forward in time. They look at groups of people. And then meta-analysis means that they also examine other research studies that are similar and see if the findings line up. This was published in Lancet in 2018. And it was research done by doctors in Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, so that's one of the hospitals in the Harvard system, and the Epidemiology Division in University of Minnesota, Minneapolis, and the Epidemiology Division at Harvard Public Health School. Research papers can be very boring, so I'm going to give you the highlights of this study, and we won't go into the really nitty-gritty stuff. What they wanted to do is they wanted to find out, well, how long do people live based off of how much carbohydrates they ate? And in addition to that, they said, well, if someone's not eating much carbohydrates, what other things are they eating? Are they getting fat and protein from plants or animals? So there's really 2 things that they're looking at. They're looking at carbohydrate intake and then plant-based and animal-based fat and protein intake. And they looked at 15,000 adults, age 45 to 64. So, middle age to just before retirement age. And they started in the late 1980s and followed these people for, let's see, 25 years. Okay, so this research study took at least 25 years. I mean, more because they had to create the study and then do the analysis. But the data collection took 25 years. Okay, so this is a lot of work that these doctors did, and it's a lot of information. So over 25 years, of those 15,000 people, 6,000 people died. So 40% of the people who participated in this research, they died. 60% were still alive. And from that, they calculated, well, at the beginning, they asked patients, what do you normally eat? They calculated how much calories they got from carbohydrates versus animal protein and fat versus plant protein and fat. And then they just looked and said, well, is there a relationship between how much of each type of food and how long people live? And the results are fascinating. So let's go to the results. Now, this is all the data that shows that this research study is constructed well, and they try to eliminate biases like race, diabetes, hypertension, smoking, education level, income level, weight change, those kinds of things. All right, so this is the first result. Very interesting. Let's see if we can zoom in on this. All right, that's good. All right, so this is a graph of how many calories are from carbohydrates in the diet and how long you live. So the y-axis, this is hazard ratio. That's essentially like the higher the number, the higher risk of dying. So lower number, 1 is good, it means you live the longest, or below 1 means you live even longer. And the bottom, the x-axis, is energy from carbohydrates, and that's in terms of calories. So what they found is that if about half of the calories you eat are from carbohydrates, you actually lived the longest, at least in this group of 15,000 people they followed for 25 years. So it looks like 50 to slightly higher, 55% calorie intake from carbohydrates actually helps you live the longest. Now, if you deviate from that, now deviate's not a good word, if you choose to do something different than 50%, the results are shown here. Let's go to the extremes. So let's go to the far right. Let's say 80% of the calories you eat are from carbohydrates. So let's say you just ate rice and bread and pasta all day, every day, with just maybe a little bit of other stuff here and there. Well, your risk of dying goes up about by factor of 1.2, or ratio of 1.2. Well, that's not that much, but it is not as good as at 50%. Now, if you go to the other extreme and you do 20% of your calories from carbohydrates and 80% from fat and protein of various sources, then, boy, your risk of dying goes up a lot. Here, 20% carbohydrate energy is a hazard ratio of nearly 1.6 times the risk of dying, or 1.6 the ratio of dying. Wow, that's a lot, and that's accounting for sex, race, total energy consumption, diabetes, smoking, cigarette smoking, physical activity, income level, and education. So, I mean, this is really fascinating. That if you have a low carb diet, you are at increased risk of dying by a significant amount. I mean, you're not talking like 1 or 2%. We're talking about, like, I don't know what the percentage comes out to for hazard ratio, but a hazard ratio of 1.6 times, I mean, that's a lot. That is not a small difference. So, my patients and family members that recommend, oh, you should go on a low carb diet. Now, I understand why they say that, because I have patients that do, or I had patients, I don't practice anymore, I had patients that do like a keto diet. Keto diet is a low carb diet, and it usually means that the rest of the food you're eating is high in animal protein and fat. It doesn't have to be, and you could do it with plant protein and fat, but usually people are doing it with just eating more like chicken or fish or eggs, things like that. I understand why people do that, because when you do a low carb diet with high animal protein and fat, your body goes into ketosis. That's why I call it keto diet, and it starts burning off fat, and people lose weight, and you can look good on the outside. You have low body fat, and so your muscles are defined. You're carrying less weight on your body, and you can do it relatively easily and quickly on a keto diet. So I totally understand why people like that. And a lot of people say that it helps with joint problems and inflammation, and I think those people are cutting out processed foods, and so I'm all for cutting out processed foods like excess salt and sugar intake. But that comes with a huge asterisk that I think a lot of people are not aware of, and that's this information: that if you have a low carb diet, no matter if you have plants or animals, protein and fat, your risk of dying goes up significantly with a very low carb diet. Anecdotally, since it's not this research, in my experience, the patients that were doing a keto type of diet, or a low carb, high animal protein and fat diet for a long time, they often had the worst spines. They had the worst ability to heal their spinal joints. And I'm going to go into that in more detail in another episode, but I think it has to do with the blood vessels to the spine getting clogged up with cholesterol, atherosclerosis, and the blood flow to the spine is not good. And when the blood flow is not good to a certain area of the spine, your body can't get in there and fix it up, can't heal it well. And so what I saw was that the patients with the worst joints and the worst ability to heal were doing a keto diet, or low carb, animal protein, fat, low carb, high animal protein and fat diet. So yes, I understand you can lose weight, you can look good, but inside you might not be doing so good. So there's a huge asterisk. And I'm not telling people what to do, and I think everyone should choose what they want. And I think there's many paths up the mountain, but some are easier and some are really hard. So I think everyone should have the full amount of information to know what the consequences of their choices are, and they should be able to choose. No one should choose for them. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about the other part of this study. So that was the main part. Now, they compared their results to other studies. So I think their study is the red one here. And then they compared it to another study that collected data in a similar fashion, and that study is the blue line. And you can see that that's pretty similar. The optimal amount of carbohydrate intake is still around 50 to 55%, somewhere in that range. So it's not just this study. They actually looked at a couple studies. Now, this is the second part, and this is really interesting. I mean, this study, I'm so grateful that these doctors spent literally like 3 decades trying to get all this information. All right, this is the second part and very important. When we eat, you can eat carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And so they wondered, well, when someone eats animal protein and fat, what happens? And when someone eats plant protein and fat, what happens? And you have to understand that these patients, they weren't just vegans and carnivores. The majority are mixed, somewhere in a gradient of, some people ate a lot of animal protein and some vegetables, and then others ate, a lot of veggies and hardly any meat, and then there's everyone in between. Like some people ate about equal amounts of each. So they looked at that, and I want to show you when people have animal protein and fat with a low carbohydrate. So let's look at the one that says HTB, this one right here, because that's their study. With a low to moderate carbohydrate intake consumption and animal protein and fat, your risk of dying goes up by a hazard ratio of 1.2. Higher numbers means you're more likely to die early. Now let's look at if you have a low to moderate carbohydrate consumption and you eat plant protein and fat, or predominantly plant protein and fat. We'll look at the HTB study, which is this one. 0.86. That means you are less likely to die and you live longer if you do this combination: moderate carbohydrate and the rest of the food you eat as plant protein and fat. Okay, so this study to me really just is the basis of how I think about plants, meat, and carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are actually not the devil. You really want to. Yeah, they're not the devil, but they could be. If you eat high fructose corn syrup in a Coca-Cola, well, I shouldn't say brands. If you drink high fructose corn syrup in a soda, and you have a pizza with a supreme pizza that I used to eat, and then you if you eat that way, you're not. I mean, you'll live. I lived. I'm 40 now, and for 30 years I ate that way. I ate supreme pizza and pork and chicken and white rice, and I had some health problems, but I still lived. I still lived to the age of 31 when I started eating differently because what I learned from my patients and my colleagues, and really smart doctors who've dedicated their lives to trying to figure this out. So I'm by no means an expert in nutrition, and I'm not a nutritionist. I didn't go to school for that. I went to school for medical school and surgery training, but I still think that what I learned and what I experienced and the information I've gathered over these many years is potentially very helpful to a lot of people. I think there's many different right ways to live. Okay, if someone wants to eat meat, that's fine. And I should end this by saying that what we eat is really. Oh, look, there's two things. What we eat is really important socially. If we look at our closest animal cousins, they're the chimpanzees, so they're apes like us. 99% of the calories they eat are from plants, but 1% is from animal meat. They actually go and kill monkeys. So chimpanzees are not monkeys, they're apes. But they will go and hunt monkeys in the jungle and kill them and eat their meat. And they will actually share their meat for social reasons, for friendship and for mating, for sex. That's 1% of the calories they eat. So our closest animal cousins, they eat predominantly plant-based, but they use meat for social reasons. And so when we eat with our friends and our family, our traditions, at least in America, festive gatherings for eating usually include a lot of meat or fish or other animal foods, and that is an important thing socially. And if you don't eat those foods, then you kind of get excluded, and that is harmful health-wise, being excluded or not being able to socialize. So for my own practice, I don't eat 100% vegan anymore. I do at home, well, most of the time, almost all the time. But when I go out with friends or family, once a week or once every couple weeks, I will eat a little bit of meat or fish or cheese, just to enjoy the time I have with my friends and family. And I found that that's a nice balance for me. I have so many stories. I will tell you one more story. Is that there was one patient that I took care of in the ER at my first job, and he was 95 or something, 90 something, and he was vegan his whole life. And I saw him, I think, for a brain problem in the ER. I think he had some bleeding on his brain. I think that was the problem. But otherwise, he was very healthy. And he told me how sad he was. He was so sad, and he told me he's vegan. He said, I've been vegan my whole life because I love animals, but what happened was that I outlived everybody that I know and that I care about, and they cared about me. Everybody else died, and I am 90. I forget how old he was in the 90s. But I'm in my 90s, and I'm so lonely because everyone else died and I'm still alive. Well, that's really heavy. So there are positives and negatives to every choice in life, and I think after meeting that guy, I told my wife, let's go have a steak. So So there are choices in life, and I think there's multiple right ways to live. Each one has its own positives and negatives, just like going up a mountain on different routes has its own positives and negatives. And just wanted to share that with you. I hope that helps you be informed about the choices you make in your life and help you make choices to help your whole being.
Oh, good morning. This is a late morning for me. I'm going to make some breakfast, and this food will be probably good for, well, some of it will be good for several days, but I'll show you what I usually make, what I usually eat.
Yeah, I'm gonna go make that shit. I'll be whatever back, boy.